Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Legends of Sport podcast. It is your bubble boy, Andy Bernstein, reporting from the NBA bubble in Orlando. We are on the tail end of our Restarting the Clock series, and I have an incredible guest for you, somebody that I've known my whole career, somebody who is going to be a household name to especially Laker fans, but NBA fans out there, Michael Cooper. Michael, what can I say about him? He's a five-time NBA champion. He was so instrumental in the success of the Showtime Lakers, and we talk about that at length in the podcast. We talk about his relationship with Pat Riley, with Magic, with Kareem, guarding Larry Bird. Some really, really great stuff. He was also Defensive Player of the Year. He was 5 times he was on the All-NBA defensive team. As a coach, he was a 2-time WNBA championship coach with the LA Sparks. He was WNBA Coach of the Year in 2000. He also won a championship with the G League team. So he's one of the first people, if one of the only people actually, to win championships in all 3 leagues, which is pretty unbelievable. Coop is an amazing guy, known for his lockdown defensive style, known for his Coop-a-loops, known for his high socks, for the string coming out of his shorts. I mean, the guy was amazing. He was amazing to photograph. He's even a more amazing friend and a more amazing guest. So I'm super happy to have him. What's really wonderful about having Coop right now is that the NBA and WNBA are getting into their finals, both in the bubble and their own respective bubbles. And, you know, Coop bridges both of those leagues. So really happy to bring Coop to you today. Enjoy it. And as always, I'll see you on the backside. Welcome, my good friend Michael Cooper, to the Legends of Sport podcast. We are deep in the bubble here, or at least I am. You're not. And we're kind of coming to the tail end of our Restarting the Clock series. So I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on the podcast today, my friend. How you doing, man? I know you just came off a hip replacement surgery, so I can't thank you enough for getting out of bed and doing this interview with me today.
Well, that's the one thing about this, Eddie. They want me to get out of the bed, so I'm doing well.
Yeah.
That was something that just came out of the blue, but I'm glad that I did it because I was in a little bit of pain, but now I'm in no pain other than just the scar from the surgery. So doing well. Thank you for asking, Andy.
Is there a lot of rehab with that, Coop?
It's going to be, but the doctors have told me the most important thing is that I still have a little athleticism in me, or my body's not totally out of shape. But that's the bad thing. They said if you don't move around, especially on the hip, and not so much on the knee, but the hip, you have to be able to be mobile. So I was up walking the day of the surgery, and they just want me to just get up, walk a little bit, move around. So I'm feeling better now.
Well, God bless you, Coop, and have a very speedy recovery. I know you, and nothing will keep you down. That's for sure.
No,
So just a little recap about you, my friend, that stuff you already know, but our listeners probably know as well. But I just got to talk about it. I mean, 5-time NBA champion with the Showtime Lakers. You were 2-time WNBA championship coach of the LA Sparks and Coach of the Year, G League championship coach, right? So I think you're the only person to have won a championship in all 3 leagues. I might be wrong, but I think our crack research, has produced that little tidbit, and it's pretty amazing, actually. And you're the perfect guest to have right now, not only because you're a great friend and I've been wanting to talk to you forever, and I love doing your podcast a little while ago, but we got the WNBA and the NBA both in bubbles and both deep in the playoffs. This is going to air, I think, right before the NBA finals and while the WNBA finals are going on. And you have experience in both leagues. So couldn't be.
We get NBA covered all the way around with basketball.
That's right. So first question for you, Coop. Are you watching games? That is a stupid question because I know you love watching games, but you're watching games. Are you watching W and NBA games in the bubble? And what's your reaction to what's going on?
I watch more NBA games, but yes, I watch both just to see how players, especially in the WNBA, to see how the players have progressed to take that league to the next level. So it's been very interesting, but for surely been watching the Lakers play.
Yeah. Well, as we speak, they're on a pretty good run. So don't want to jinx it. we're just gonna put it out there.
Look. You can't jinx what's going on. This is the inevitable. Is that the fact that Lakers are going to win a championship. They're going to win it, and it's just a matter of how many games it's going to take and who they're going to face.
All right. Well, I will hold you to that. I will quote you on that. It will be on the actual Zoom tape.
Well, you know what? Since we're going to do that, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go ahead and do what my boy Charles Barkley does on TNT.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna guarantee it. Pat Riley did that in 1987 for us. I'm doing. Lakers are gonna win the championship.
There you go, Coop. Let's talk about that. When Pat got up there at City Hall and he made that prediction that the Lakers would go back to back, what was your initial, you personally, your initial reaction to that?
You know what, Andy? The one thing about basketball, and when it's played in the normal sense, and this is very unnormal times right now.
Hmm.
But back then, you had what 2.5, 3 months off.
Hmm.
If you went all the way and you won a championship, you didn't have the luxury of when other teams ended back in April and they looking at almost 4 months off. So when we won the championship, all of us were thinking, okay, wow, we take a couple of weeks, maybe a month off. People like to go to Hawaii, wherever your paradise place is. That's where you wanted to go with your family or by yourself or your significant other.
Hmm.
And then you would think probably about a month before the season, I'll start getting back into shape real slow and work my way into it. And for us, we never really used training camp as a getting in shape because we knew Pat Riley. That was totally against anything he believed in.
Hmm.
And it worked to our benefit. So we figured, there's going to be 2.5, 3 weeks of hard work to get ready for training camp. But and you know what? And the more I think about this is what he wanted to happen. He wanted that trigger to go off. So when
Yeah.
Pat Riley made that statement to me, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for my teammates, the core group of us, that meant less of vacation,
Yeah.
less time with the family, and get in the gym early. And when he says, I guarantee that we'll be back, that set the tone. So what we did as guys, as I remember I did, the first 2 weeks after that, when he made that statement, and them next 14 days,
Hmm.
that was the time to get your rest because it was about getting into the gym. It was about staying in shape. I think that triggered us as far as how we ate. Don't
Hmm.
get yourself too out of shape to where you come. The only one that had the luxury of coming in the way he wanted to, but Kareem was so, I got my Kareem shirt on.
Yeah.
It was so,
I love it.
Kareem was so fitness conscious that we knew Kareem wasn't going to come in 15, 20, 35 pounds overweight.
Hmm.
But the rest of us had that potential. So
Hmm.
that's what it did. It just triggered us to get into shape, get ready to play basketball, start thinking basketball
Hmm.
earlier than we used to think about it.
Yeah. Well, that was it was quite the moment. It got a lot of publicity. I had that picture, remember, of him looking into the globe of the trophy like it was a crystal ball, and Sports Illustrated ran it as a double truck, in the magazine. That was it was a bold statement. I don't think really any coach has said that since that moment because
And I said, Pat Riley had the innate ability,
yeah.
Andy, to I said he was a good coach on three aspects of
Hmm.
coaching. One was attention to detail.
Hmm.
Two was preparation in game practices
Hmm.
because he always had us ready to play in the game because of the way we practice. And third was motivating. He
Hmm.
could motivate us, and that was a motivating tool.
Yeah.
What player, and we had never heard this, and I'm not sure that going even back into college at that time, no coach had ever told, hey, I guarantee next year we're going to win the championship. What coach would be bold enough to say or make that statement in
Yeah.
front of millions of people, and especially our fans, because that was done at a rally, at our championship rally? What
Mm-hmm.
coach would say that? And Pat Riley was the only one daring enough to say it. And, I've never really asked him. So that's the thing. I'm going to try to get Pat on my podcast,
There
Showtime
you
with
go.
Coop, and ask him that question. Coach, what made you say that? I'm pretty sure he wanted to motivate us. And what better way to do it than guaranteeing another championship?
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of Pat, I get to see him here from afar. His Miami Heat are deep in the playoffs of the conference
Mm-hmm.
finals, and he's up in the owner's area where he can't get to me, I can't get to him because of the credential situation and the quarantine requirements. But it's so great to see him. I mean, the fact that at his age he's still doing this, he's still into it. His competitive spirit is still, burning strong. It's really amazing, don't you think? I mean, he could have retired a long time ago, but it wasn't for him.
You know what, Andy? Basketball, I don't think is a pastime for a lot of people. And if you
Mm-hmm.
really love this game, and I think some of the greats, and you mentioned Pat, but I must mention one, Jerry West.
Mm-hmm.
Been a
Mm-hmm.
long time have go retired, but you know what? That's who they are.
Yeah.
And basketball burns deep in that pit in our stomach. And Pat loved this game so much, and you can tell by the way he always approached us in our practices. And you can tell, looking at the Miami Heat now, when I watch that team, I can see his fingerprints all over that group. Now, obviously, Coach Palestra is the head coach, and he gets a lot of credit. But that team is not that team without Pat Riley. And I guarantee you, Coach Spoelstra goes and probably talks to Pat on a daily basis. But it is a pleasure to see Coach Riley doing what Jerry used to do. Instead of being down in the trenches, he's standing outside the trenches, up top, looking down. And you know what? The guy still looks good.
He looks great. The hair is still perfect, Coop.
If he believes in the Grecian formula and got everything colored.
You know what? I think he embraced it, kind of like you. You know, you embraced it too. I mean, why not? Me too. I didn't have a choice because mine just left me. But what can I say?
Well, some of us understand the concept of let it go.
Yeah,
so we just let it go and just live with it.
Yeah, but it is so great to see him, and wow, so many incredible memories. I mean, I want to talk about something I read that you talked about, which are the 4 aspects of a championship team. I hadn't heard this from you before we read it in our research. And you said the 4 aspects: 1, be on time; 2, respect for your teammates; 3, must be polite to people, which is an interesting one; and 4, communication within the team. Those are very interesting aspects. I mean, I would have thought of a few other things, but those are the 4 that you put in there. And the one that really struck me is that must be polite to people. I mean, where does that come from, Coop?
You know, that comes from my grandmother, my upbringing. And there was, when we're coming up as young people and you're in the streets and people are being mean to you, and when you start playing basketball, some guy tell you, you can't guard me, or, how kids get real frivolous with their attitudes on the court. And I was always coming home crying because I wasn't a fighter. And I mean, I didn't cry a lot, but I would come home, my feelings hurt. And my grandmother said, you know what, it's nothing wrong with your feelings. Your feelings can be hurt. The job is for you not to hurt other people's feelings. So just growing up and understanding that, and not going out and this world can be very vicious. And I talk to my son about it now, especially with social media the way it is, and how kids can sit in their basement or their bedroom and cyberbully you. That doesn't mean that you have to do it. So being nice to people is always something I live with. And as we got with the Lakers, that was the one core thing that Pat Riley always talked about, is always be complimentary to your teammates. And the word that he always used to use and was for us was constructive criticism. You guys can criticize one another, but always make it in a constructive, team, positive way. Because, again, that old saying, you get more flies with honey than you would with vinegar.
Right.
So, Kareem and Magic, and they, everybody on our team used to get after one another. It's how you say it. And you can say it with a little, venom, but it's important that you say it and say it the right way.
Well, it's kind of like a marriage. You still love each other, but you could have serious differences of opinion, and somebody might piss you off too, or do something, that they weren't supposed to do. But look, at the end of the day, you guys are a team. And Pat talked about the 12 plus 2 plus 1. Actually, Gary Beatty talked about it on my podcast, and you know it very well. The 12 players, 2 coaches at the time, him and Bill Burtka, and 1 trainer. That was the inner circle, the inner sanctum. And Pat said that everyone else were peripheral opponents, including wives, family, anybody else, me, media, didn't matter. I mean, he was going to war with you guys, right? So
he went to war with us. It's funny, Andy, that you would bring that word up. Peripheral opponents. I love that.
Peripheral opponents.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was geared more toward the media.
Yeah.
But again, it kind of filtered out and it started extending out to anybody that would take your distraction away from the team.
Right.
And as you said, wives could sometimes do that.
Yeah.
And but it was that was something that we safeguarded. Anything that we did with our team stayed within the team.
Yeah.
And that old slogan that Las Vegas came, I do believe they stole that from us. What you hear in Vegas, what you do in Vegas, stay in Vegas. That was our theme song. What you did and do on our team when we went out on the road, and come back, it stayed on the team, and we don't air our dirty laundry in the public.
Yeah, well, that of course brings up the whole issue of then and now, because now everything's out, right? I mean, all the players have social media. The media has social media. The team executives have social media. Fans, of course. So I shudder to think what would have happened back in your day, if there was social media going on. I just had Jack McCallum, who you know really well from Sports Illustrated. And, it was really his word and Bob Ryan and the great writers of the day. It was like their word was the gospel, that the fans and everybody took in. And teams didn't air their dirty laundry in public through the media. I mean, what's your take on then and now and today and the fact that, we just saw, players kind of giving other players a hard time during the playoffs, with various teams. I mean, it seems a little, I don't know, anti-productive to me as a group.
And you know what, I think growing up, and again, growing up in the 60s and 70s where you had the rotary telephone, and the only time somebody could reach you was when you were at home or if you were at somebody else's house or you were at work. And I think what you're seeing now is, I think of today's abilities as far as to contact people were back then. I don't think it really would have worked because when we grew up, we didn't want to know about anybody else's business. I mean, if you heard about it, it was through the gossip or at the water hole or the water container at work or something like that. So it was just about taking care of your family, taking care of your business, taking care of people that you admired and loved and cared for. And I think now with the explosion of technology and the way it has had, sometimes with these guys, I don't want to know all the things they're doing. And some of we could talk about that would just
yeah.
Their parents or grandparents will roll over in their grave if they found out this is what they're doing. So today's game is really, really difficult. I think, again, with the ability of social media, and again, you wanting to really raise your platform as who you are as a person and a player, the kids really have a good, and some of the players have done a great job of really taking themselves from one level to another. And I'm not too big into that, but when I heard that LeBron has 74 million, I think it is, might be 74 million followers, people that know about him.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that is not through basketball. And again, but with the ability of basketball, people are really understanding who he is off the court. And that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing as long as you use it in the right way. But again, it is just amazing the things that people can do to really raise awareness of yourself, or as we're going through these tough times economically, racially, you can raise people's awareness and really let them know what you stand for. And as long as people, or actually kids, because those are the ones that sometimes are using it the wrong way, as long as kids are using this the right way, this is a great tool. But like I said, I really don't want to know a lot of the things that you do out there in the street and in the club and in somebody's backyard and your girlfriend's house. I don't want to know all about that. But again, that's the times we're living in. So we just have to raise our kids to use this tool the right way.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. So I want to go back to the four aspects of the championship team. The one thing that was missing, in my opinion, was leadership. Right. And I know it probably is in there. One of these, probably communication is part of leadership, or leadership is part of that. But we need to talk about leadership on those Showtime Laker teams, because you were drafted in 78, right? You were the 60th pick in the third round. They don't even have 3 rounds anymore. So if you get drafted today, you would be drafted. So you were the 60th pick by the Lakers, right? And so you're on the team a year before Magic comes, right? Kareem is already on the team, seasoned veteran, resume speaks for itself. Magic comes on the team. You got, Pat Riley wasn't coach yet, but eventually Pat became coach. Talk about how the mantle of leadership worked on the Lakers, because Pat was like driving the bus, right? But Magic really, was the voice on the court and in the locker room, I would probably be fair to say. How did that all work? The egos, and how did you guys buy into all of that philosophy that Pat instilled in you?
Well, I think what you have to go back a little bit, and I'm going to go back to when I first got with the Lakers. Jerry West was the coach. And then when Dr. Buss bought the team, they wanted to bring in a championship coach. So they bring in Coach McKinney, who was a disciple or an assistant coach with Jack Ramsey up in Portland, when Portland had won the championship. And the things that they had done up there with keeping their business in-house, forming identities on the team, Coach McKinney brought to the Lakers. So the first thing he did with me is he sat me down and he said, Coop, I got enough scorers on this team. I need somebody to play defense. A la Bobby Gross, a la Lionel Hollins
Mm-hmm.
was a good defensive two guard. So when he said that, that kind of put me in my role right there. Now, he wasn't telling me that I couldn't be a star, but you had to be a star in your role.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was how I was going to stay on the team. So as that concept is bred within us, Jamal, Norm Nixon, and now you bring Magic into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
Now you go back and Coach McKinney, unfortunately, doesn't finish out the season. Westhead comes in, Pat Riley takes over, and Riles knows the dynamics of championship basketball when he was with the Lakers and they won the championship. And Coach Riley wasn't a significant part of that team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the integral part of the team, he was a significant part, and he
Mm-hmm.
played his role. And so what he starts doing is he starts developing everybody's role. Okay, Coop, this is the role I want you in, but you have to do more out of that role. And I think with that coming from the top, and I always say greatness drips down on you; it don't drain up. And Pat Riley, Dr. Buss, was the first, greatest owner I've ever played for, the only owner I've ever played for. And then you have Jerry West, and Jerry West drifts down to Pat Riley, and it comes down to us. So for the biggest thing that Coach Riley wanted from us was, you guys, sometimes great teams can talk their way through problems. That's why nobody on our team was afraid to talk to one another, because we were all for one, one for all, and it was all one voice. And sometimes that one voice has to come from different people.
Mm-hmm.
What voice to have of Magic Johnson? I mean, here's a kid comes in after winning an NCAA championship, and this guy's not afraid to talk because, and even though he's a rookie, he's coming to an NBA team with some of the greatest players that's ever played this game, Kareem and Jamal Wilkes, with the greatest player that's ever played the game, and Jerry West, the logo. And I think he already knew his role. And again, as the roles develop and people get more comfortable in your role, we always never disrespected each other, going back to what we said about being polite to one another. So communication was key, because if you can't talk to each other in a professional adult manner, you're not going to be very successful. And that kind of takes me to what I heard when Boston lost that second game in Miami, and players outside chipping and all this noise going on. No, you keep your business to yourself and you don't take it out to anybody else. So we were able to do that and have constructive criticism, because if Kareem wasn't getting back, I always felt I had the liberty to say, hey, Cap, and I said it in a nice way, get your ass back.
Right.
So I think players, and then you start adding a James Worthy in the mix, and a Bob McAdoo, some of the legendary players, Jim Chones in the mix.
Yeah.
Those
Michael
players
Thompson,
there got
all
respectability
these guys.
and credibility in the league. And, we weren't too above our boots to not listen to anyone, because we were all trying to figure this out and trying to win. And as the winning comes with winning championships, now the formulation of the positivities against the negative factors come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Coop, is it fair to say, and I know how biased you are and I am, but I mean, if we were coming from the outside and looked at the NBA, that the Lakers-Celtics rivalry in the 80s was the greatest rivalry in the history of the league. Showtime versus Boston. I mean, how could it ever get better than that, right? I mean, you lived through it, you played through it, you won, you lost, I mean, looking back on it, do you look at it as really the golden age of the NBA?
I think it was a turning point of the NBA. And I think it all started with two players, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird.
Yeah.
But to take it a step back, and as you said, I've watched it because growing up here in Los Angeles, my uncle was a Celtic fan.
Oh, boy.
And he used to enjoy the way the Celtic players used to play, because he believed in team together. Everyone achieves more. And that's how Boston played. So they kind of created this rivalry before they even started the rivalry. But again, watching the Celtics win all the time, and then you have three of the greatest players in Elgin, Jerry, and Wilt, never being able to break that bond, because I think if it was a 3-on-3 basketball, I think the Lakers would have won all the time. But basketball is a five-player sport, a team sport. So with that being said, you watch and you see how they couldn't break it. Now you see Jerry West moving to the front office, and Jerry never really talked about it. He never talked about it. But once you bring in Magic and Bird into the equation, now you got what is truly considered the greatest rivalry that sports has ever created.
Yeah.
And it was truly awesome to see it before.
Mm-hmm.
And for this poor kid, lonely kid from Pasadena, California, to be involved in one of the greatest things of turning a basketball. Larry Bird, Magic Johnson brought team play back to basketball.
Mm-hmm.
They brought the joy of passing back to basketball, and they brought hard work. Because both of those players, and I can speak more so for Magic than I can for Bird,
Mm-hmm.
but you know what? Magic didn't come to practice and take time off.
Mm-hmm.
It was always about, we got to get this done. And our whole goal
Mm-hmm.
every year we went in, it was always about, what do we need to do to beat Boston Celtics? Because we figured that was going to be the team. Now, if them other teams came out in Philadelphia or whoever else came out of that East,
Yeah.
then we would deal with it then. But our goal was to think about Boston and how we were going to beat them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was unbelievable. And you talk about work ethic. I honestly get my work ethic from two people. One, my dad, and two, Magic. Because when I was a young photographer and he was a young basketball player, we kind of started at the same time in the league. I watched him every single game, just bring it. I mean, you guys be blowing teams out. You'd be, in the middle of January playing some scrubby team. But he'd still, every possession, he was into it. Never mailed it in, and he talked about how his dad, had 2 and 3 jobs while he was growing up, and how his mom worked, and that was the only thing he knew was hard work, right? And it bleeds over. Kareem too, you had some, and look where Pat comes from, kind of a hard scrabble background in Schenectady. So, you guys were a great combo.
And you know what? Sometimes you have to get that hard work mentality from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, obviously, I saw my uncles and dad and my mom and them struggle,
Mm-hmm.
and the hard work they have to put in. But then that hard work has to be continued, because you can work hard to a certain point, but if somebody's not pushing you to keep it up and keep it going,
Yeah.
and you look at Jamal Wilkes with the work that he put in,
Mm-hmm.
and the greatest coaches, some of your coaches have to be the push behind you. Norm Ellenberger was it for me, to push Coop. You got to work hard, man. You're
Mm-hmm.
not that star player, so you got to use something else. So when we all got to where the Lakers are, it was about hard work, and that's why we practiced so hard, because Pat Riley say, you play the way you practice. So our practices were very, very intense, and we just kept that hard work rolling into our game.
Yeah, legendary practices. Absolutely legendary. Well, I got to talk about you and Larry Bird, because you talk about that you had your role, and that you embraced your role. I mean, you were a defensive specialist. You were the first player off the bench to win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know how many times you were on the all defensive NBA team, but that was where you hung your hat. But we had the Coop-a-loops, and you hit it, you drilled a shot when they needed it, and I just watched some videos of you this morning before we got on, and I forgot like some of this. You used to fly into the stands, man. You flew into me. I can't tell you how many times. You were relentless. I mean, just absolutely relentless. But Chick Hearn I think it was Chick who said, the way you played Larry Bird was like you were an overcoat. like he said, Bird. He says, Bird wore Cooper like a winter coat. I love that line.
Well, it wasn't very warm, because I'm a thin person, so he probably got cold. But Chick had some of the greatest one-liners for me that I'd heard of. The other one that I really, really appreciate to this day, I love even more, is that he said, Cooper's like linoleum. He's all over the floor. So when you hear those kind of things, it makes you really appreciate your craft. And, again, like you stated, I was a defensive player, but I knew that I had to do other things for our team to get better. And when they started sagging off of me, I'd go to Kareem. But, what, I appreciated my role. And it's like I said with Coach McKinney and with Pat Riley, this is your role, but you can still develop and evolve from this role. And that's what I happened. So, again, my role sometimes on the defensive end was to instigate guys, get guys up. Hey, man, come on, Cap, come on. Magic, play the guy. If you're going to yell at me for not shooting the ball, then I get to yell at you for not playing defense. So that was some of the fun part we had with our team.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was a lot of fun, and everybody had their role, and I just glad to do my part and be part of something very special.
Well, Coop, when you're D'ing up Bird, and we know Bird's famous for trash talking, one of the great trash talkers of the history of the NBA. I assume that he would, and I've watched some videos where, and I was there when he would get very frustrated with that he'd be elbowing you and calling the ref to make a call, and and you kept your composure basically every time. Can you remember any specific moment where you really got under his skin and he might have said something to you? I mean, you don't have to tell us what he said, but do you remember one?
Hey, Andy, listen. Remember that old thing is never let them see you sweat? It was an
Right.
underarm commercial back in the 60s. Never let them. That's when Larry would get after me. That's why I would have to stay calm, because
Yeah.
I knew if I showed any type of emotion or frustration, then he would see that. And it same went the other way too. When I saw that I was frustrating, so my job now was really to get up under his skin. But you know what? He said one thing to me one time. He didn't really do a lot of trash talking to me,
Mm.
because you know what? It wasn't going to work. So Larry, and I've heard people say this, and Cedric Maxwell once said, you know what? Larry said he wasn't going to talk. He was just going to take care of business out on the floor. That's the best way to handle somebody as great as we were.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing he said on this one play, and I remember it was 1984,
Mm-hmm.
the year they beat us for the championship, and I believe it was in the third game when we were at Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we were coming back on him, and I'm like getting real huffy, and I'm feeling good about myself and stuff. So he's down on his bench on his knees, and I'm down there next to him. I got my defensive hand out, and he looks over at me and he goes, "I'm getting ready to wear your ass out." Okay, all right, I'm down now, Andy.
Yeah.
I'm getting him at that. So Robert Parrish comes to set a down pick from the free throw line down to the baseline. Larry comes off, and Larry catches the basketball. And as soon as he catches it, I get through the screen. I'm right here, and I'm saying to myself, okay, I got you. I got you right here. He gets the ball. He goes up for a jump shot, and Kareem kind of sees it and kind of takes a step forward. And I jump as high as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to block the shot. And Robert Parrish slips and goes to the basket. And Larry, I don't know how he got the pass to him, but he catches it and he slam dunks it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're running down the court, and he has a smirk on his face. And he says, "I told you, MF." That's the only words he's ever said to me in that situation.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm thinking, you know what? This is not about him scoring, wearing me out. This is about his team scoring and anything he can do to add to that. And that's the only time he's ever said anything to me other than that. But, we played each other at a respectable pace. I never really went out to try to elbow him or hurt him, but I would play him as hard as I could.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, I remember those legendary, and all the fans out there will remember it too. What a great time in the NBA, man. Can we go back a little bit to Game 6 of the 1980 finals, right? So just to reset the clock here, it's Magic's rookie year. You guys are playing Philly. Kareem can't go. He stayed back in LA. Magic takes his seat on the plane. All this is legendary Laker history, NBA history. And you actually started that game, Game 6. You had 16 points in that game. People don't give you enough credit, quite honestly, for what you did in that game. And I watched a good part of a replay of that game. I mean, you came to play that day, man. What did you learn about Magic in that game? I mean, this is a rookie. It's just like takes the team on his back. And could you see, how this was going to unfold for the Lakers moving forward after that championship? I mean, could you see that this was a dynasty, like really appearing right before your eyes?
I knew that we were on to something special, and I knew we had a very, very special. We had a leader. We had a leader on our team because at that time Kareem was considered the captain, and he was the leader of the team. And remember the game before that, Kareem twisted his ankle.
Right.
So he was injured and he was out. So Kareem, they say, okay, it's a 7-game series. We go back here. Let's give it all we got and bring the next game back. We'll have it play the game in LA, and Kareem will be healthy. So Magic's greatness started the next morning to where we're going on the plane. We get on the plane. At this time, Andy, we don't have the luxury these guys have now, flying charter. It's just the team and the team. We were on a domestic flight. The luckily thing is that the NBA would buy up all the first class for most of the players, and if you were a rookie, you got to sit and coach, but you got reimbursed. But we always left Kareem's seat open, which was the first seat, 1A, when you walk on the plane because it had the most leg room. And we left that seat open. We're all sitting and we're waiting for Magic because he's the last one to come. And I really don't believe he planned this, but it was just the way it was. But Magic comes, we hear this boombox sounding, Frankie W. Mays singing. Magic comes onto the plane and he looks at everybody and we're kind of like looking at him and nobody's saying anything. And he goes, have no fear. Magic Johnson is here.
Oh my God.
Crank the music up even louder. And the stewardess went crazy. Sir, you must cut that down. But that started the leadership role that he would establish. So we get to Philadelphia.
Wait, hold on. But then he sat in Kareem's seat, right?
And sat in Kareem's seat.
Exactly. Which nobody ever did.
No.
Yeah.
But again, he was establishing his leadership role. And I really don't believe that he had this plan. This was just something that was bestowed upon him within him.
Amazing.
And we get to Philly. We get ready for the jump ball. And Magic, we're getting ready to huddle the breakout, go for the jump ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Westhead goes, okay, Jim Jones, you're going to jump center. Magic goes, wait. No, I got this, coach. And everybody's looking at him like he's crazy. And we're like, okay, Magic's going to jump center. So he goes out there. You should have saw the look on Philadelphia's face.
Yeah.
When he jumped into the circle. Now, Magic, we all knew Magic could barely dunk. So we knew he wasn't going to out-jump Caldwell Jones. So he goes out there, but it threw Philly off. And when that game started, he single-handedly took over all facets of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Point guard.
Yeah.
He slid over to the shooting guard when Norm wanted to go point. Slid down to the 3 when they moved Jamal to the 4, and I was at the 3. He started playing. When Jones came in, he went to the 4 because I moved to the 2. Jamal went back to his regular position. And then finally, we ran our offense through him as the first. And they might say what they want to, though. This is something that happened in the last 50 years. Magic was the first point, not point forward, but point center.
Point center.
Yeah. And he
Unbelievable.
handled everything and took control. And one of the greatest games a rookie has ever played, 42 points, 15 rebounds, 15 assists, to really start the wave. Yeah. And what a lot of people don't know, you mentioned to me, Andy, I had 16 points that game. But people forget Jamal Wilkes had 37.
No, I didn't remember that.
Jamal Wilkes had 37 points, a
Incredible.
career high, a playoff high for him. But it was all overshadowed by the things that Magic did. And I think that was a sign of greatness. And that was a sign of we knew that we weren't going to be just a Laker team anymore. We were going to be that Laker team. And that's what Showtime became.
Yeah. Well, let's fast forward to 84, and you guys lose that heartbreaking finals to Boston, right? And everyone's thinking, oh, my God, this is like history repeating itself. You know, Jerry West lost 6 times to the Celtics as a player for the Lakers. Probably why he never talked about it, because it just killed him, inside. And he talked about that actually on the podcast and in his book, how it just destroyed him, that he could never beat them. You guys have to spend that excruciating summer getting ready for training camp. What was the mindset when you guys assembled for training camp for that 84-85 season, which we know that you guys won the championship? You're on a mission to win it and be the first team to ever win a championship in Boston Garden, first Laker team to beat the Celtics. But what was that first meeting like? Can you remember that, what you guys talked about?
Andy, I'm going to even go back a little bit more. Sitting in the locker room, after answering all the questions from the media, Magic and I were going to the showers. We finished showering. We just kind of like stood there for about 5 minutes. And it was very, very hard because, one, most importantly, Lakers could not beat the Celtics. Yeah. 2, he had finally lost to Larry Bird because he had been beating this guy all the time, going back into college. So he finally lost to him. But our mindset going into the summer was we will never, ever, ever let what happened there. We broke down as a team. There was a play that James Worthy threw the ball away, trying to inbound to Gerald Henderson steal. There were many things throughout each game. And that was the thing that we thought about, is that we weren't going to break down as a team anymore. We have to stay tough. And even coming back the following season in 85, we lose the first game of that thing, and Pat Riley went off on us at the hotel.
Yeah, not only did you lose the game, it was called the Memorial Day Massacre.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was
we
one of the worst. One of the worst losses in NBA Finals history. Yeah,
Andy, we lost in big fashion. That's what so we thought that was going to be reminiscent of '84, but '84 season set the tone for that. And even though they beat us very badly in that game, we weren't going to be deterred. And I think that really set the stage for everything. But just remember in '84, everybody again took their game to another level. We did the vacation thing, and I think we did too much, but we did come back, and we were prepared to play, and we wanted Boston. Yeah. That was our mission in '85. Yeah. We want to see you one more time, because I guarantee you that it wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, Pat talked about on another show that I do that that two factors affected the turnaround in '85. The fact that you lost that game, the Memorial Day Massacre, which of course was played on a Monday, and that the next game two wasn't until Thursday, which was unusual. It's like an extra day, right? So you guys had an extra day for practice and sort of to get your head straight. But also that Kareem was just being just roasted in the media, that he was through and he shouldn't be playing and blah 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 blah. And he took that very 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 personally, and he took the team on his back. And did he express that? Because I know Kareem didn't talk a lot about personal stuff, but I mean his actions spoke better than anything else. But man, the rest of that series, he was just absolutely unstoppable, right?
And I think you hit it right. Kareem was a man of action,
Mm-hmm.
and he heard all and between those 2 days, I mean the games.
Mm-hmm.
He heard how old he was. He should retire. The Lakers need to get rid of him right now, not wait till after the season to get rid of him right now.
Yeah.
We weren't good enough. This is the same thing that's going to happen. It's going to be even worse because of the Memorial Day Massacre. And the funny part about it is those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was hot in Boston.
Mm.
We didn't want to be there. It wasn't our beds. They were treating us bad at the hotel. There was a lot of things going
I
on.
remember.
But you know what? It really brought us together, because
Yeah.
we had some good practices, we had some good team meetings those 3 days that we had in between,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that really solidified us as truly that team that could have went on to three-peat, and well, that's another story, but for
Yeah.
sure the repeat,
Mm-hmm.
and that really helped us pull ourselves together, and it turned Pat Riley into another coach, a different
Mm-hmm.
kind of coach, and
Mm-hmm.
Pat took it to another level. His game plan for preparation even became more intense.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helped propel us to go on to do something that the Wilt, Jerry, and Elgin and the Laker team had never done before, to finally beat Boston. And you know what? Jerry never talked about it, but when we got back to Los Angeles, you could see the joy in his face. It was
Yeah.
like he was part of it,
Yeah.
but it was like he had played in the game,
Oh
because
yeah.
he was like, yeah, you guys, and that felt good.
Yeah, the leprechaun was off his back, your back, the Laker organization, the city of LA. It's like finally, finally, it was just amazing. I mean, the elation in that locker room and the party that night. And then we went to the White House the next day. Remember? We were out there,
Yeah.
the Rose Garden. Nobody had slept that night. It was great. It was
Oh,
crazy.
looking worse for the wear.
Yeah. And you remember that they made us wait. I think they made us wait like 45 minutes in the Rose Garden. It was hot as you know what. Was standing out there in the sun, and all of a sudden Reagan comes out. The whole thing was so surreal. It was just amazing. But Coop, I want to talk about your coaching career, because first of all, what was the linchpin that decided you decided you wanted to be a coach?
You know what? I think through all the coaches I've had, even going back to high school, and experiencing Jerry West coaching under him,
Mm-hmm.
playing under him, I think Pat Riley was the one that kind of like put the seed. And this is no joke. For the end of our career, like in 89, 90 season, Magic, myself, Byron Scott, all the guys used to sit in the back. And we always used to say, what are we going to do when we finish playing?
Mm-hmm.
And Byron goes, you know what? I'm gonna probably get into coaching, and I said, you know what, I'm definitely gonna be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I love being around the game of basketball. And Magic goes, you know what, I want to own things in LA. I want to own an NBA team.
Yeah.
And so as we finish up the season and we start realizing what retirement meant from the NBA, everybody started evolving into what they were going to do. And I mean, sure they can. Byron Scott coaching the NBA, great coach. Magic was the owner of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to get my niche in the NBA, but into the WNBA with my firm hope. But I think the coaching techniques that Pat Riley used to bestow upon us,
Mm-hmm.
attention to detail, hard work, the word team,
Mm-hmm.
all those things started coming into play. And the key with coaching to me is everybody knows how to coach. The spin on coaching is, can you get people to do what you're asking them to do? And I thought that was such it was an easy word to understand, but it was also a foreign word, because I had an opportunity to coach the Denver Nuggets. And that was a pretty good team. Kenyon Martin, Carmelo Anthony, some great players there. But it was almost like coaching, like we were talking two different languages, because we're all Americans speaking the same thing, but it was about, so that's why I really appreciated what Pat Riley was able to do with us, because I thought we were an elite group. And he finally was able to get his message through, so we understood what he was talking about to move forward. So for me, that was my biggest goal to get over, was how to get my voice clear enough for players at this time in the NBA and then in the WNBA to understand how to win a championship or how to win games.
Well, you did it twice, back to back. You had amazing teams with the Sparks, 2001, 2002. I mean, you had Lisa Leslie, Delisha Milton-Jones, Mwati Mabika. You guys were a powerhouse, man. And, it's almost like you had to stay out of their way. They were so good, right? But how was the dynamic, being a male coach, coaching professional women? Like, was there any difference? I mean, players are players, right? Male, female didn't really matter. But the techniques you learned from Pat, you could very easily bring into the WNBA, just like you did in the NBA, right? And later on, even now in your career.
Right? Well, that's what I did.
Yeah.
And I didn't look at them as ladies, like it was women's basketball, men's basketball. And I think they respected that a lot and appreciated it. I treated them as basketball players. Lisa, you're my Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Mwati, you're my Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
And Delisha, you're going to be my Michael Cooper, Jamal Wilkes, any other player that we have. And I think with them, and I didn't cut back on them, I just pushed them just as hard as we pushed anybody else. And yes, we were a very formidable team. But you remember, we had to go through a Houston Comet team.
Oh,
who had
yeah.
Cheryl Swoops, Tina Thompson, and Cynthia Cooper.
Yeah.
Who were like the mainstay, and they had won the first 4 championships of the WNBA, starting a dynasty like no other. So they were the Boston Celtics of the WNBA. So it took us some time to eventually get over that hump, but we did. And we did in grand fashion, but it took a lot of hard work. It took some sacrifices. It took some times where we kind of like, they got after, and women get after each other in the locker room more so than men, but they always, and my thing with that was constructive criticism. You got to just make sure everything is positive, and it turned out well for us.
Yeah, absolutely, Coop. What was your feeling when you heard about the new CBA in the WNBA that they have fought for years, and that now they finally are starting to make more money? These players don't have to play year round. They don't have to go to Russia and Asia and Europe to make more money than they would in the WNBA. I mean, what was your initial reaction being around WNBA players as much as you have been?
Oh, I loved it, Andy. I loved it for the fact because these women played just as hard as these guys, if not harder. I know during the off season, Lisa Leslie, when we would take her up to UCLA and practice with Magic's traveling team, she could hold her own against them. She just couldn't do it in a physicality way. But athleticism and talent-wise, she could play with these guys. So when I hear that these women get an opportunity to get some time off so that they really can take the WNBA to another level from a creative side, from an athletic side, and from a business side, because I'm always one to believe out of sight, out of mind. So when our players went overseas, nobody knew about them for 6 or 7 months. And all of a sudden, you're going to ask them people to come and buy their shirts, and they don't really know these players. And by the time they really get to know them, the season's over again. So now that these women get to really be appreciated for their talent, I still think the pay can go higher, but you have to take one step at a time. Now you're going to really see this league, and you're going to really see how talented these women are. And, Lisa started with the first woman to dunk in a game. You got Brittany Griner that consistently dunks when she wants to. And you know what? It's unfortunate, but the armchair guy that doesn't like the WNBA, that's the one criticism he had. Well, they can't dunk, and I can do that. And, well, you know what? They're sitting in a chair, and they're out there running up and down the floor. So I think you're definitely going to see this league because you got a new brand of young ladies coming in. It might be a hiccup on this because of the COVID. And now there's no college basketball, and there's been a big delay. But I think the players that they have in the game today are definitely worth paying to watch to see them play, and they want to take the league to another level.
Oh yeah, I've had the experience of my older kids who are in their mid-20s now. My daughter and her friends, when you were coaching during the Lisa Leslie years, I used to take them as 4th and 5th, 6th graders, to Staples Center to watch. And then now my other daughter is 12, and her little friends are going to watch, this new incarnation of the WNBA and the Sparks. And it's so empowering as a parent, first of all, to be able to show your kid that, hey, this is the same court Kobe played on. This is the same court, Lakers are going to play on, in 2 weeks. And, I think it's great for dads with daughters for sure. And that brings me to Kobe Bryant, because I don't know if Kobe, personally was instrumental in getting the CBA done for the WNBA players, but everything that he stood for, with trying to build a women's game and trying to, teach Gigi and get her at that level where he felt, the women's game had to be, I think was very instrumental. It was very, positive for the growth of the WNBA. So I want to talk about Kobe. The last thing I want to talk about, and the legendary workout, right? I mean, I had to talk about it. And you were assistant coach for the Lakers at the time in '96. You guys worked Kobe out, right, to see if he was somebody you wanted to draft. I know you can't give a lot of details about it because you probably swore to silence, but talk about that day and meeting him, and what you took from that workout, because it was just you and him, right? And Jerry West and Mitch Kupchak, I think, was there, right?
No, there was most of the staff was in there. Coaching staff was in there. Dale Harris was in there, and I think the thing that amazed me about that workout, and I was given some instructions to what to do on certain things, because we were going to have, it was an hour workout. There was 3 other players in there, but they were shooting at the other end. But they really wanted to see how adept Kobe was as far as finding your sweet spots on the floor. And a player, if James Harden is one that brings to really kind of let you know what this is about. If James Harden can get to that little step back 2 feet behind the 3-point line, 8 out of 10 times that young man's gonna knock that shot down. If Kevin Durant can get to that going right on the right side of the basket, that 12-foot jump shot right there, if he can get to that spot, for him, 9 times out of 10 he's gonna knock that shot down. So they wanted to see how Kobe was able to maneuver. So what they did is they gave Kobe a couple of spots on the floor. Okay, Kobe, you got to get here 5 times in a row. Let's see if you can get there. And my job was to keep him from that spot. And it was probably one of the worst, the hardest workouts I've ever had, because I had just retired. And I'd like to put this on a footnote. I was 40 years old.
And he was 17.
Banging the kid 17 years old. So he had a little bit more oomph in his tank than I did. But I think it was a great workout because Kobe was able to consistently get to that sweet spot.
Yeah.
No matter where Jerry told him it was, he had to work me into that spot. And I'm playing him to keep him from that spot. And that was the thing that amazed me as a young person. He was that knowledgeable and that aware and that detailed on how to get there. Now, sometimes he was a foot off, but he got close enough to it. And he didn't hit every shot, but he got his shot off every time he wanted. And that was amazing to me. The second thing that was amazing was how strong he was. He had that wiry strength like I had, because Kobe didn't come out of high school all bulky and all that, but he came out with a nice size on him. And there was a situation where I had to take him into the low post. And he had to, first of all, come from one side of the block to the other side to get the ball. And we did it both ways. And I was to deny him and bang on him. And when I finished that session, man, I had never been that sore because I hadn't played in a while. But that was like playing against Larry Bird. But he got into the low post and was able to get his shot off. And once he got there, he was only limited 1 or 2 dribbles. So I knew he was only going to get 2 dribbles somewhere. And there was an old saying that Bill Sharman used to tell me: in the low post, the ball has to take you somewhere. So what he's saying is when you catch it, you just don't put the ball between your legs, start dribbling. You dribble the ball and let it take you somewhere. Kobe knew that.
Wow.
And again, it helps to have your father. Jelly Bean Bryant was his dad, and he probably worked with him. But those are things that are kind of like lost on you, because when your father talks too much, like my son now, it goes in one ear and out the other. But Kobe was able to maintain that and really work himself into the low post. And I knew he had to go up at some time, but his ability to raise up in the air reminded you of Michael Jordan when Jordan first came into the league. How do you play Jordan? You don't. You just keep him from getting 50. And this guy here was the same thing at a very early age, and that's the thing I admired about Kobe.
Yeah. Were you guys aware of what a student of the game he was at that point, how he had studied all the greats that had tons of videotapes when he was growing up in Italy that his dad would have sent in. And he would study everybody and all the moves. When we did our book together, he broke down photos and videos like I had never seen anybody do in my life. And my own pictures, I'd look at a nice picture of him and Jordan, but he would dissect it like we were in a lab or something. The kid was unbelievable. And so you were there for the birth of the Mamba. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable.
Mamba. And now that you say that, shit, he might have studied me. That's why he whipped my ass so easy.
You know what?
Play defense, but
you're probably right.
If he did that, that is a finite art that a lot of kids don't carry with them.
Mm-hmm.
And as you see, and I always say this, players are better when they leave the league when they come into the league. Because, again, you get the knowledge, you formulate everything, you really understand the game. And I'll say this with Dr. J. Dr. J was a better player when he left because when you lose your athleticism, you have to revert to your basketball IQ. And you have to understand angles. And I think Kobe understood that at an early age. And as you said, him studying film, you know what, he is a master of the game. So that enabled him to even be a step 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of everybody else. And it was truly a joy to watch this young man. And now that I'm hearing all these little stories that come out, you really are amazed how such a Mamba he was early in his career. That wasn't something that just happened. Kobe was killing people early in his career.
Oh, yeah. If you watch some of his high school tapes, I mean, he was just destroying people.
Well, that's just athleticism, Andy. That was just pure. He was better than everybody else.
But his competitiveness, I mean, Jerry West talks about, he sort of reminded him of himself. I mean, he had this next level of competitiveness, of greatness that he just would never settle for being less than. It's amazing.
He knew what he wanted. His goal was the NBA. He knew what he wanted, and how am I going to get there? And that was the best way. And you know what? Usually a player with that kind of talent, athletic-wise, don't really have the work ethic. But now you combine the work ethic with the athleticism, with the basketball IQ. What you get? Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, there you go, Coop. Well, Coop, just tell us what you're doing now, man, because I want to talk about your podcast. I want to pump that a little bit. Showtime with Coop. It's still going on? You still doing it, right?
Still going on. Still having guests. I did a great interview I had with Rick Mahorn.
Oh, that's a bit interesting.
Listen to that because we kind of got after it because he's with the Bad Boys, and maybe that'll be another segment we can handle in the Legends of Sports because they had a very good team. You know what? The fun part about that is that with the Lakers in 1987, 1988, and 1989, we could have been the first. We were the first team to repeat in 16 years. Could have been the first team to do it since back then in those days too.
Yeah.
Detroit Pistons beat us out of that. Now with the Sparks, we're going for 2001, 2002, and who do we see? Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn with the Detroit Shock, and they break up my second three-peat. So
that must have been a bad dream for you, man. It was terrible. Was Cheryl Ford on that Shock team?
Yeah, she was, and she was Rick Mahorn with a wig on, man. She was.
Well, Karl Malone's daughter. I mean,
I know Karl Malone's daughter. She was a brute. She was fit for. But you know what? We had to choose to beat them. But I don't want to talk about that. I'm talking about me.
Talk about you.
Just taking a little time off. Obviously, I love the fact that I'm around. My son is 15. He's playing at Crossroads, and he's becoming that player. So it's kind of fun to watch that. Trying to be a good husband. My second marriage, so I'm doing a good job. And you got to remember, happy wife, happy life.
Absolutely.
On top of the things. And one thing I'd like to mention about the WNBA, before I got off of that, I said there was 2 things I enjoyed about coaching in that league. Okay, one was their uniforms fit them better. Than the guys wearing baggy pants and all that. And then the second, which is the most important one, was they smell better when they come back to the huddle. Because women wear perfume and all that, and I was always calling timeouts. And you guys, come on in, gather in, let's get together.
I had fun talking to Tina Thompson at the Hall of Fame about her lipstick. That her lipstick always had to be perfect, and Lisa always had to look good. The ponytail had to be perfect.
That's perfect on everything. But
that's what I love about her so much. Any photo shoot we ever did back in the day, we would do Polaroids, and she had to see the Polaroid before the final shot. I love her to death. Are you still?
Did you ever think that Well, Magic then was probably like that, but not to the degree of what they look like. It was like what the shot looks like.
Yeah, well, Magic told me once. The first time I did a shoot with him was for Converse, and maybe it's his second year, and was one of my first commercial shoots. And he comes on the set, and I do a Polaroid, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I got to do a Polaroid to see how it looks." He goes, "When I come on the set, you be ready." Says,
Also, Magic's a diva too.
That's right. Yeah, I don't wait for any Polaroid. I said, "I got it, Mr. Johnson. Never did a Polaroid again." That's a story I love to tell because it just tells about how he pushed me to really be the best I could be, and put the pressure on. That's okay. Hey, in a perfect situation, are you gonna, post pandemic, gonna go back to doing your camps that you were doing?
Oh yeah, we're going to do that. I'm in the process now of writing a book.
No kidding.
And everybody has heard from most of the Lakers over the years,
and Gary Vitti too. And Gary wrote a great book.
I'm going to write a book about what I saw, and the book is going to be affectionately titled "A View from the Bench." From all the benches I sat on. And
I love it.
It's going to be a fun one. Cover a lot of areas and genres and different things from basketball, but it definitely is going to hit on Showtime. But that's it for me, Andy. I'm still, again, got to mend this hip. It's coming along great.
Well, thank you for sitting all this time, Coop. I hope it wasn't too painful that you had to.
Never painful with you, Andy.
I love you, man. I mean, we've had so many great times together. I'll always be thankful you coming to my 60th birthday party and rock it out, disco out. That was super fun and just so great.
That's why I got to get my hip better because I'm gonna be at that 65th, 70th. Yeah. I want to be there.
God willing, I'm knocking on wood. Coop, I love you, man. Andy. Hey, heal up, and I'm going to see you soon, I hope. And you know where to go for photos for the book, by the way, right?
For sure. I do, Andy, okay? I'll stay in touch, man. Thanks, care, buddy. Dude.
All right, man. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with the great Michael Cooper, one of the really, truly wonderful guys in the NBA that I've been able to be friends with, been able to document his career. Feels like only yesterday that I was there in Boston Garden where he's D'ing up Larry Bird, in the 85 finals. And man, what an incredible era that was, that Showtime and Celtics era in the 80s. I kind of feel like that was the golden age of the NBA. I have to say that the 85 finals was really my favorite finals. People ask me a lot, which was my favorite of all of my 38 finals this year. That has to be it because, everything the Lakers accomplished in that incredible finals, avenging the 84 loss, which was really difficult for them. And then winning in Boston Garden, first time a team had ever beaten the Celtics in the finals in Boston Garden, first time a Lakers team had ever beaten the Celtics ever in the finals, and Coop was part of that. So thank you, Coop. Thanks for, really kind of getting out of bed to do this podcast today. I know you've been laid up with this bad hip. You had hip replacement surgery, and thank you for taking the time today. And everybody out there, you should follow his Showtime with Coop podcast because it's really great. Not just because I was on it, because I was, and thank you, Coop, for having me. But he's got great guests. Coop's perspective is amazing, and I can't wait for the book. So I need a side copy, Coop, when it comes out. So thanks again, Coop, for taking the time. Folks, we're coming up to the end of our Restarting the Clock block here, and it's hard to believe. It feels like we just started it, but it's been a great run. A couple of more episodes to go down here in the bubble. Not going to tell you who the guests are because they are a secret. I know who they are, and Veronica, my producer, knows who they are, but we're going to let you know right before because these are going to be very, very special guests to close out the Restarting the Clock block. So thanks to Veronica for always sending me some great material, some great research, keeping everything going while I'm away down here in Orlando. Folks, you can continue to find us on the LA Times app and online, as well as Apple and Spotify. Our social media, please keep following us on Instagram at Legends of Sport, our Twitter at Legends_of_Sport. Our blog is legendsofsport.blog, and our TikTok and YouTube channels, which we are continuing to put more and more videos on, as Legends of Sport. And of course, my photography at ADB Photo Inc. on Instagram. And I'm here covering the playoffs and the finals. So you're going to see a lot of my photography on my Instagram at ADB Photo Inc. So everybody, we'll see you next week with another great episode of the Restarting the Clock series here on the Legends of Sport podcast. Until then, stay safe, be well, And you know what I'm going to say, right? Wear your mask. See you guys.